I can see you again. Okay, are we ready? We'll open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any comments on agenda items? Any comments on agenda items? Okay, don't see any. Enrollments are in your packet for your review. Item 5, approval of minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion, questions, comments, corrections? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bennett? Here. Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Yes. Dr. Favola?
I don't think you can hear.
Bill, do you vote to...
Yeah.
Do you vote to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Yes.
Mr. Whitener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. Next. Oh, thank you. I'd like the minutes to reflect that we held an executive session prior to the meeting tonight for personnel issues. Thank you, Carolyn. Item 6, superintendent's report.
Looking for a motion to approve item 1 under the superintendent's report. There is also a supplemental agenda that's for resolution to approve an MOU. The board has asked to table that out of an effort to make sure that the public has opportunity to view that. They will be voting on it in 2 weeks. It will be back on the agenda again. I apologize that I did not have approval of it in a timely manner to get it on the regular agenda. So we will not be voting on the MOU this week, but we will in 2 weeks. And so I'm only asking for approval of item 1 under my report.
And we have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second.
Rob motion.
Yeah, Rob was first. Yep. Thank you, Bill. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mr. Perry? Yes. Dr. Favola? Bill?
Yes.
Mr. Swilly?
Yes.
Mr. Whitener?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett? Yes. Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. Did you have anything else, Heather?
An update I can review.
Okay, thank you.
Talk to this side?
PowerPoint's already up there.
I don't know if your mic's working or not.
No, I didn't.
Oh. There you go.
Now it's on. Okay, so the board has asked me to provide updates every 2 weeks, and I'm doing so. So we are currently tracking 5 cases, and we learned of these cases today. So that is why, even at the close of the business day, we were still doing contact tracing. All the contact tracing has been completed. Those people have been notified, but it's spread out throughout the district. So there's 2 at the high school, 2 at the IC, and 1 at the PC. So those are our new numbers as of today that we're tracking. The community transmission rate moved into moderate, so that's all good news. We all should be happy about that. We have been in substantial for several weeks, and now we are in the moderate category. So very happy about that. We did a survey of students, and these were the results. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through this. In 7th grade, we had 116 kids out of 159 that responded. There are 48 Fusion C3 kids in 7th grade, and 30 of them responded to the survey. And then if you look in the 5th column, there were 86 out of 111 hybrid kids that responded. So this just gives you an idea about how many kids responded out of the whole entire student body. So one of the things that we're looking at in looking at returning kids in for 4 days of Fusion C, or 4 days of all in, is the number of kids that would change. And so these numbers actually, I was optimistic about them, so that there aren't a lot of kids, or even if there are a lot of kids, that it evens out. So down here you can see in 11th grade there's 9 kids who say they want to come back from Fusion, but there's 9 kids that are saying, look, I'm going, I'm out. So this affects our section sizes. And when we're looking at these larger places, like the auditorium and the gymnasium and the cafeteria, you know, I was very nervous because the only numbers I really have are for second semester. So I was using those numbers not knowing how many kids potentially would come in or go out. So I felt pretty good about this, that there are not huge swings. I think we ought to be able to absorb this. So these were the kids that responded and how they responded. So it was, most of the kids want to come back, probably about 75%, 73%. And that is about the number that we have in right now in a hybrid model. So that was good. That was good information to know. So we're looking at the use of these large areas. We're looking at the use of the auditorium, we're looking at the use of the gym, and looking at the use of the cafeteria. What I need everybody to understand is when you put a classroom into like this space, you're displacing something else. Whether it be band, whether it be a lunch period, or whatever. So we have to look at alternatives there, but we're getting a better idea of the numbers. There are also some larger areas larger classroom areas that we're looking at. There aren't a lot of them, but there are some classrooms where we might be able to get 30 kids. So we're looking at those areas. We're paying attention, trying to pay attention to section rosters. The 6 feet of social distancing. Now, I need folks to understand why this is critical. 6 feet of social distancing is critical because that is the metric that is used by Department of Health. And when you have a kid that tests positive, if that kid is surrounded by 8 other children and they're less than 6 feet away, all of them are quarantining. So it's 8 kids out of one period, and then that child would move to the next, and there'd be potentially another group of 8 kids that would be affected. So in just a very short period of time, we could have a lot of kids out on 2 weeks of quarantine. So the best model that we can come up with is still going to give us those 6 feet. But I do believe that we're looking at these larger spaces, and I want to come back in 2 weeks with a plan that shows you what this would look like and what are the trade-offs. So we're still trying to do it with 6 feet of social distancing. We're trying to calculate associated costs. So what is it going to cost us? If we were to have to get outside, you know, a shelter outside, what does that cost us? And what is the lead-in time? There are associated costs with technology, right? Because if you have you have 4 classrooms in this space, and everybody is streaming with their teacher, right? Through a headset and a Chromebook. But again, they're in front of their teacher, then what does it take? What does the bandwidth need to be in here? There are many associated costs with this that you guys may not be considering, but that we have to. There are also costs that we need to consider with safety and security. So, you know, we have to look at the logistics of any kind of auxiliary housing or auxiliary structures that we might be able to temporarily put up. We have to make sure that they're safe. We have to make sure that they're secure. So those are some of the things that we're getting into the weeds on. I ask you to be patient, that We are talking through these things. We spent a lot of time in the last 2 weeks, a lot of hours. There are things that we've already scrapped as ideas. A lot of times between now and last March, you think you have a good idea, and as I've said many times, you don't know what you don't know. And then somebody sleeps on it and we say, no, it's not going to work. We thought it was a good idea yesterday, it's not going to work today. So these are just some of the things that we're working on right now. The CDC did update their guidelines, not on social distancing, but they did update their guidelines on vaccines and who would need to quarantine in the event that they had been vaccinated. And so if you're fully vaccinated, you may not need to quarantine, depending on where you are in that process, if there's been an exposure. So we'll follow these. They're the new updated guidelines from the CDC on exposure after you've been vaccinated, or exposure after you've had the virus too. I wanted to give the board I still am struggling to get a mass vaccination for our staff. Every time I get a link, I send it out. I've done that over the weekend, and people were able to get themselves signed up. So I've really encouraged all of our staff, all of our faculty to, if you can secure a vaccine on your own, and you can do it faster than I'm able to get it for you, do it. So about 64 have had their first dose. 369 employees, roughly, and 277 it's about 75%, have indicated to me that they're interested. The 64 are the ones I know. I'm not making anybody, I'm not the vaccine police, but if people email me and say, take me off the list, then I know that they've started their regimen. That's all I have. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And to the best of my ability so far with the work that we've been able to do and the data that we've been able to gather.
Thank you. We go on to committee reports. We had a Buildings and Grounds Committee earlier this evening. Shane, can you give us an update?
So we held a Building and Grounds Committee meeting prior to tonight's session. The Director of Facilities, John Chapolsky, led us through a summary of some of our accomplishments over the last year. So in addition to all the work that Building and Grounds has led us through in preparation and execution of COVID safety, there are a number of projects across the district that we've also been able to accomplish. So John walked us through a number of those, and in addition to that, we talked about our plans to proceed with the roof replacements across the district. So if you recall, about a year ago, we talked about the district plan to do roof work on several of the buildings across the district. Last summer, we completed the Intermediate Center project. That project came in at cost with no overrun, so that's a big accomplishment. This coming summer, we will accomplish the high school as well as the administration building. So we will proceed with those projects as well.
Thank you.
I said this in the committee meeting, but I want to also say it publicly that I haven't been on the board forever, but I was coming to board meetings before I was on the board, and I've seen the way some other things have been done, and I am always impressed after these Building and Grounds meetings with the plans that are in place to keep on top of things. I'd liken it to the idea of living in a house for 10 years and not doing anything, and then everything has to be done in the house at the same time, as opposed to what's happening now where there's that preemptive, it seems like it should be common sense and it should go on everywhere all the time, but we know that doesn't happen. Like there's this preemptive looking ahead at what can be done, looking for problems before the problems become so big they come looking for us. So I think that's commendable, and just it speaks to the good work that's being done by Shane and Heather and John and all the other admins that are involved in that, and their staff, because they're the ones that are the eyeballs that are seeing a lot of the stuff on a day-to-day basis. So I just think that's worth mentioning.
Yes, you are so right. And thank you to the staff for that, keeping us out of those difficulties. New business, we have a resolution looking to be approved, to approve the budget of the Luzerne IU unit, number 18, for the coming year. Do we have a motion for that?
Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion?
Bill, I would just like to say that if you look at the numbers, mechanic areas, we have a decrease for 47, 41, which is huge for mechanic.
Yes, I was noticing that. Thank you for pointing that out, Lori. Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry? Yes. Dr. Favola? Gil?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Swilly?
Yes.
Mr. Widener?
Yes.
I can barely hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Mrs. Bennett? Yes. Mrs. Gregory?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes. That is the last of the agenda items. Are there any other comments?
Oh, sure. Since you're looking for them.
I'm looking for them.
So I just wanted to weigh in. This is not news to any of my fellow board members. I've been sending emails the last couple weeks. The kids need to come back to school. So what we have in the lower grades is working as well as it's going to be, and I'm appreciative of it, that 4 days a week for the kids that want to be in school, fifth day for teachers to be working on the online stuff. The snow days come up. That's an argument that people can have every single year, even outside of a hybrid schedule, is, you know, whether we should have school on any given day or not, and I'm not really interested in entertaining that discussion tonight. But by a mere matter of coincidence of how the snow days and things have fallen this year, had the children been in traditional school, there would have been about 29 days of school available up until this week. I say 29, I think it actually was 30, but we'd already have had that day off in between the two semesters, so I took that out. My hybrid children would have been available to have school 11 of those 29 days, which is already cutting them back to like 45% maybe of what they would normally have been having. Because of how the snow days have fallen, in 2021, my two children have been in school 4 to 5 days total for this calendar year. That's not because Tunkhannock did something wrong. That's just because it decided to snow a lot so far this year. However, had they been in at least 4 days a week, they probably would have at least doubled that. And when you're talking about access to education, that's a major and undeniable inequity that's happening. And it's a combination of things that are creating it. Not all of them are in our control, but bringing the kids back to school for the hybrid students that want to be needs to be an option. Heather had a lot of great information. It's really encouraging that the numbers that came back from that survey give a swing of about, what, maybe 10 or less kids between the different grades, which that can be deceiving in the sense that you don't know how that's impacting individual sections of classes. So it's not necessarily a one-for-one, but from the numbers we've had in the past, when we talk about having a classroom that can have up to 30 kids, with the exception of band, the highest amount that we had in any classroom on the last time we were looking at individual sections of classes was 26 kids, and in an entire school day in the high school, there was only 5 times in a school day that it hit 26. Most were 24 or less. There were 37 sections a day that had 21 to 26. There were 20 or less students in 59 of those that we are talking about being above the 15 that we have been comfortable putting in a classroom. So to say that it's doable is not even a question. What it could look like, there's some factors that are going to be into play, and I do know that administration is looking at this very closely and carefully, and I just want to make sure that, I know my fellow board members already realize this, for me, any solution that involves the kids in the hybrid program coming back any less than 4 days a week, any later than the fourth quarter of the school year is not going to be acceptable. So I think for the most part, we're on the same page. There are certain things, we talk about, when you want to talk about the 6 feet, whether or not Holly Arnold agrees that 6 feet is the mandatory versus 5 is irrelevant, because the board as a whole and administration has made a commitment that as long as that's the recommendation that we're going to follow. So we have to find a way to make that happen within the best of our ability with the circumstances that we have. And I can appreciate that. I just know that it is possible, and we need to be fully committed to doing so because it's important. Not only does it finish out this school year, but it shows that we have that option going into the next school year, not knowing what that looks like. And I want to throw the disclaimer out there that if some, Sudanese variable of this COVID virus were to end up here and none of the vaccines were effective against it, and we're all back on all these lockdowns in 2 weeks, because that's what happens these days. I know we can't factor for that, and that could potentially change things. But the trajectory that we're on now, with the data that we have and what we know, this needs to be not just something we're investigating, but something we are fully committed to accomplishing. That's my piece on that.
I know administration plans on coming back with options for us in a couple of weeks on what those options might look like and what trade-offs we might have and how we might accomplish those things. So we look forward to seeing those. And I know that there's a tremendous amount of detail and complications in any of those plans there will be. Because there's so many things to take into consideration and to plan for. Anybody else? This is the time.
So my name is Jennifer Brody. I have one child who is in 8th grade and one child who is in 9th grade. I've been working with a group of other people trying to get answers and information from about a month ago when I was here and asked for that. To date, we've received about 5 answers of the 10 questions, like in the higher categories of what we asked, so I do appreciate that type of information. But I know that a lot of people are still looking for information specifically around how are our children's grades being affected by being out of school. And that's one thing that, we're still looking for that type of information. I know it's been asked multiple times. We haven't yet received that. So I think a lot of people are looking to actually understand kind of currently where we're at as far as our kids' progress. In addition to that, I wanted to point out that the CDC guidelines, now that we are in the moderate range, the recommendations that have been shared before are that you actually need to now follow 3 of the 4 guidelines. So social distancing at 6 feet, if that isn't one of the things that we're gonna follow at a 6 foot, we actually could come back to school today, so right away. So I know that was a big factor, and all the information that we've gotten is not being able to maintain the 6 feet and the category that we are in. So that's currently changed, and I would recommend that everybody really understand what those guidelines are, because they are different. So it's recent that it has changed, but I would like to point out that it has changed. And the CDC actually updated guidelines today. So I think we all need to understand what that is and make that available and make sure that that's taken into consideration instead of using the data from months ago where a lot less was known. So where things currently stand, I believe that my children's education is essential, and I support a full return to in-classroom instruction. So that's full-time. That's what I would like to see. And that is because currently my kids' grades don't reflect the knowledge or what they're actually learning. They're at risk in competing with others when they do go to college. Their education is worth the additional risk that we currently have from COVID. I'm willing to sign a waiver for any additional risk if that means my kids can come back to school. I'm willing to help be a part of the solutions and try to come up with plans and volunteer if that's what's necessary for the staffing gaps, whatever's needed. I'm willing to do that. My children are suffering in isolation currently. My child's social development is at risk. The improvements to the hybrid model, they're just not enough. My children are constantly frustrated with the online classes and knowing what work is even due. They're trying to do it right. My children, they both need structure to learn. And currently, as a parent, I'm considering moving my kids outside of the district because I need to see something better. They deserve it. So I'd like that to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lauren Boakley and I'm in 8th grade. I want to speak tonight so you can hear what this past year has been like from the perspective of a student. I will be affected by everything decided tonight, so I ask that you consider my opinions on this. Personally, my grades have not dropped this year, but I know a lot of people's have. Many of my friends' grades have dropped considerably because of not being in school full time. Not being able to ask questions and be instructed in person has caused a lot of stress and worrying for me and other students. Being partially online has also made it hard to track assignments. It has made it very hard to have a stable schedule too. I have always had trouble sleeping, and the inconsistency of schedules now has made this worse. I haven't seen many of my friends in months. I miss being able to talk to them and laugh with them. Being in a class with only 6 other kids all day makes it really hard to socialize normally. In most of my classes, we have also been learning slower than usual. When we are out of school, the few Zoom meetings we have are rarely at the same times, and it's hard to keep track. It causes a lot of stress trying to plan out a day with little notice for things like these meetings. One of my biggest worries is being behind for the rest of high school and maybe even in college when I have to compete with other students. I want to go back to school full-time because I'm afraid how much this instability will cause issues for me and other students in the future. Thank you for paying attention and listening.
Hi, my name is Ramich. My daughter is a senior in high school. She dropped almost every class but one in the last quarter because she was failing every single one of them. One of her teachers did not understand how to use the online system, so instead of reaching out to ask for help, most of the students were allowed to fail. Now, on top of that, I've been in pediatric nursing for 22 years. I have seen what isolation and being away from socialization can do to children. Not just teenagers, not just young adults, but what it can do to young children, the trauma that it can cause, long-term lasting effects that continue for the rest of their lives and can cause issues with them being parents later on in their lives. We are doing a disservice to our children. We are basically abusing them. They should not be stuck in rooms with barely anyone around. They shouldn't be stuck behind computer screens trying to figure out what they're doing, how to do it, being frustrated, feeling like they're failing, feeling like no one understands and no one is standing up for them. When are we going to stand up for our children and put them first? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Cattell. I have 2 students in the high school, 8th grade and 9th grade. My question was, and it was Jen's first question too, what is the current fail rate? Do we have an answer to that? You've been asked it multiple times and we've been given no answer. Do you have an answer?
I will have an answer. I don't have it.
Okay.
I do not have it. To be quite honest with you, all we have done this week is to meet about discipline. So I have not asked the principals for a failed list. That didn't hit the radar.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I just want one more comment. We've been putting the health and the safety and the security as our #1 priority. I want to see the board and the school shift to put our kids' education as their #1 priority.
My name's Russ. My son is in 8th grade. As of today, the CDC guidelines were changed. Being in moderate, there are 5 key mitigation strategies. Consistent increased use of masks, which I understand is being done. Social distancing now is to the largest extent possible. There is no 6 feet. Hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette, which we are practicing. Cleaning and disinfecting, which is happening, and contact tracing in collaboration with local health. So as of today, being in the moderate, we are actually following all of these. So there is no reason why I feel these children should not be in school as of now. At present, with our classroom square foot, at 15 per class, you're getting your 6 feet distancing. That gives the children about a 36 square foot bubble. If we go to 20 per class, it ends up at about a 30 square foot bubble. That gives them a 6 foot by 5 foot. So they're getting a 6 foot one way, they're getting 5 foot the other. At 25 per class, that bubble goes to 24 square feet. So we're getting 5 feet and then 4.5 square feet. These children can still not touch each other. They can't get near each other and they're wearing their masks. I'm just confused as to what the holdup is to our children's education.
The Department of Health is who oversees our contact tracing and to whom we answer. When we send a line traces in, the line list in, we're sending it to the Department of Health. What they ask us is, anybody been within 6 feet of this person for a cumulative amount of 15 minutes. So, what I was trying to explain before is that if we are able to keep 6 feet, and that is the plan that I'm working on, if we're able to keep 6 feet, then we don't have to put kids in quarantine for 2 weeks.
Most schools are quarantining for 3 days.
No, sir, it's not.
Some of them are.
No.
I disagree.
Okay. Lynn?
No. No. It is not. We're following the Department of Health, Pennsylvania Department of Health.
I'm not talking about this school.
With Pennsylvania Department of Education. And the quarantine is 14 days from your last date of exposure. It could be shortened to 10 days, and it could be shortened to 7, but there's extenuating circumstances to shorten those quarantines. But I can just, if I could just for 1 minute speak as to what Ms. McPherson is talking about, I can tell you firsthand from doing contact tracing that it's been a godsend that when we reach out to the parents of the students, first we ask the student, were you ever closer than 6 feet? Now were you out of your desk? We ask the parent for permission to disclose their child's name, and when they say yes, we ask the teacher, have the kids been any closer than 6 feet to this student? And the teachers are doing such diligent work to make sure they make it their business to keep them 6 feet apart. And it is that factor that keeps us from having to quarantine an entire class and to shut down. It is social distancing because by Department of Health, less than 6 feet for 15 cumulative minutes is the mark, okay? So the social distancing has been what has allowed us to continue here in Tunkhannock, and I feel very fortunate that we do.
So did that actually change as of today? Because it's 10 days. I have an email right here from...
And the CDC says that social distancing is to be the largest extent possible.
If I may, I understand what you're saying. You're saying the CDC, which is a different entity than what these ladies are talking about. They're talking about the Department of Health. of Pennsylvania who we have to answer to. We may not like it, but the CDC rules are not the same.
So with the other interesting piece, so with 8th grade or 7th grade or some of the younger grades where they travel with the same kids all day long, if it was a smaller classroom size and there wasn't social distancing maintained, that was up to the Pennsylvania Department of Health criteria, because that's who makes that determination. When Tuncanic's doing contact tracing, we have to follow what the state is telling us, not CDC, for the quarantine issue. We could jam 50 kids in a classroom if we wanted to, but ultimately we have to follow Pennsylvania Department of Health. So
what's the point of the CDC?
well, they haven't agreed at any point in any of this. But my ultimate point on this was that in like 7th and 8th grade, they travel with the same kids all day, so there might only be a couple kids that are affected. But when you get into the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, they're with a different group of kids in every single class or period of the day. So if my kid gets COVID, which they did, we went through this, my kid gets COVID and he sits by 4 different kids in each period of the day, he just sent, whether it's 7 days, whether it's 10 days, however many days you want to say it being, he just sent all those kids out for that many days. If there was 4 on each, if there's 4, one in front, one behind, one on each side, that was within the 6 feet. In each class of the day, we just removed those kids from education for 3, 7, 10, 14, 22, whatever many days you want to call it at any given time, because we know those numbers keep changing. So if we're able to maintain social distancing, that is preferable for that purpose alone. Whether we agree that it's necessary in the big picture or not, it becomes irrelevant because we have to follow that quarantine guideline. So that's why if we have a plan where we can social distance and bring the kids back 4 days a week, that's golden, right? Regardless of whether we agree on the details of why it should or shouldn't be that way, that is a plan that everybody can have a satisfied feeling with, for the most part.
Hello, I'm an 8th grade student. I moved here about a year ago, and I was in school for about 2 weeks before it shut down and we went virtual. And I've been finding it really hard sometimes to learn, because I like to learn in class. I'm better to be sitting right at a desk when a teacher's explaining something. And I'd really appreciate it if we could go back to school 5 days a week.
Hi, my name is Jody King. I have 2 children in the school system. Madison is in 9th grade and Jack is in 7th grade. My children just came back this week. They were out for quite a while because I was concerned I'm immune compromised. I've now had my vaccination, and so has my husband, who's also at risk. Our children have been suffering terribly. When they were in school before they came out for that period during Christmas break and such, they both struggled with masks. They both struggled with teachers giving breaks. They struggled where teachers spent more time yelling about masks and what kids didn't do on their days off than they did getting taught. So I said, you know what, I'll keep them home. My kids are thriving on being in school. Why? Because they need structure. When you have a 9th grader who says, I need structure, I feel bad. I feel terrible. There is no structure at home. You can't be structured when the teacher meets different times. One of my children have a teacher that doesn't even know how to operate Zoom, logs on, says I can't do this, and logs off. One of my kids basically doesn't understand why he can't talk to his friends. He doesn't understand why he can't be near them. He's near them when he's walking outside. He's told he can have his, talk with his friends on the school bus, and they're closer on a school bus than they are in the classroom. Whether you believe that or not, doesn't really matter. I've watched parents raise concerns on Facebook pages to be shamed by teachers, board members, and other PTO members, which I find disgusting. Parents raise concerns because they feel they're not being heard. Some parents can't be here. I couldn't be here. My daughter's in basketball. My daughter has practices and games. I choose to be there with my daughter at the one thing she has right now. So I can't be at board meetings. Many parents work, can't be at the meetings. Many parents don't have the time. They may have just gotten home from work and they're the only parent in home. So they can't come here and say their concerns, and when they say their concerns to other people on Facebook pages, they're shut down. They're told that they're being negative. They're not positive in their children's lives because they mention what they don't like. Well, I'm here to say, I'm a positive parent, but I'm positive we are failing. We are failing terribly. My kids are suffering, and so are the rest of these kids. They need each other. We keep saying kids will get over this. They won't. They won't. Years from now, we're going to be ashamed. Ashamed that we didn't do what was right by our children. We need to stand up for our kids. They need to be in school. And I am pretty positive that most hybrid parents would say, I'll sign a waiver. Most parents have signed a waiver for sports. They'd sign a waiver for school. I'd sign a waiver for my kids to get an education and to be with their friends, get their socialization, get their emotional fulfillment, and academically thrive. It is sad what we're doing. We should be ashamed of ourselves. And as far as in 2 weeks we'll come back, why haven't we been planning to be back? It's been a year almost. Why haven't we been planning to be back? This is your job. I mean, you were all elected to do this. It's time we do it. Get our kids in school.
I'm Shira Knight. I'm Noah's stepmom. We spoke a couple weeks ago, and you stated that you have 75 teachers at the high school. You stated that our classroom average size is 20 by 30, so 600 square feet. During the school day, we have 4 lunch periods, each serving 85 to 110 students. You stated that you didn't know the number of classrooms in the high school. You also didn't know how many students would return. Your best guesstimate would be 600, possibly dozens more. So let's assume that you have 650 students returning. I wrote this before tonight, so now we have a better picture that it's really not going to be that high. Here is a map of our high school, okay? Not utilizing the gym, auditorium, or the cafeteria for any classes. I conservatively estimate that you have 67 classrooms. You stated that we have 13 to 15 students per classroom is acceptable to allow for proper social distancing. Given those numbers, you have neither a spacing nor a teacher issue with 75 teachers. As a taxpayer, a step parent, and a graduate of Tunkhannock, I'm disgusted with our school's handling of COVID. Wyalusing, Elk Lake, Lake Lehman, Lackawanna Trail, and Dallas, just to name a few, have been able to figure this out, and they've returned their students to the classrooms where they belong. Tunkhannock has been complacent, and you're satisfied with a 2-day-a-week in-person instruction, a mere 40% of a regular school week, and virtual for 2 days a week. Virtual days have shown to equal virtually nothing. No real instruction. We pay for you to educate our children, and you are failing miserably. Tunkhannock is a brick and mortar school. We luckily live in a county where we have had some of the lowest COVID rates. Our students and families deserve 5 days of in-person schooling. 5 days, not 4, 5. You've had 11 months to figure this out, and it's time to return to class.
That's right.
Hi, my name is Bobby Jarout. I have a sophomore and a senior in the high school, and I have one that graduated several years ago who is actually teaching first grade in South Carolina and has been 5 days a week since August. She has 22 kids in her class, and they do the best that they can to social distance, but no, 6 feet is not a magic number. A couple of my concerns is we had asked for a plan. I know you said in 2 weeks you'll have that. Like the others have already said, I'd like to see something sooner. We need to get these kids back to school. I know you're talking about fourth quarter. It's not acceptable. We are watching our kids fall apart at home. I understand that it's working for some of the kids, and I am ecstatic that it is good for some of them, but it's terrible for others. I have watched my children's friends break down sobbing that they're failures, that they'll never make it in college, that they're going to lose the scholarship that they were given because they can't pass their classes. These kids should not be dealing with this their senior year. We have to do better for them. We have to. I've talked to other children who are failing They feel defeated and have said to their parents, can I just quit school? Seriously? Can I quit school? No. That should not even be crossing their minds. I don't have the answers, and I understand you guys have said you are working hard to get them, but we need to find them. We need to get these kids back in school. What we're doing to them mentally and emotionally is horrible. We need to educate them. They're doing it in other places, and we can too. We've always said we wanted to be a leader, so let's be a leader. A couple of my other concerns or things I would like to know, the failure rate, like others have said, but I'd also like to know what the grade averages are this year compared to last year. And I know in the community meeting that we had, we talked a little bit about the funding that we were given. I think it was $115,000 through FEMA, and it was used for PPE, cleaning, backpack sprayers. I know it was mentioned we also got grants through CARES or ESSER. That number wasn't indicated, but in some research, I think it was about $2.3 million, if I'm not mistaken. I know that was used, as indicated in the meeting, for Chromebooks, Clever, background stuff for virtual that they said we wouldn't see, masks and cleaning, possibly for payment for teachers in the summer. I'm not positive if I heard that correctly. But I would like to know how much of we have left for that and what we're earmarking that money for. And again, I would just encourage us to try to get these kids back to school as soon as possible. I'm also asking for a full return. I think, we've talked about 4 days. These kids can be in school 5 days. We don't have that much time left in this year, and we can make it happen, and we should make it happen for them. Thank you.
My name is Bella Canello. 0% recovery rate from suicide. 0. 99.98% recovery rate from this virus. Give us waivers, we'll sign them. We're holding you guys accountable. Enough is enough. 5 days a week. You have plenty of peer schools that can help guide you. We need answers. You're not giving answers. You need to give us answers and get them back. There's plenty of support for it. And the joke of a survey you sent out, let us come up with a survey so we can get some real answers and real numbers from all of the people that can't be here tonight. 0% recovery rate from suicide. Find out how many students are fighting that right now.
Anybody else? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.